Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Before we dive in, let's go over a brief summary of the business. So this is an e-commerce and Amazon FBA business created in August of 2014 in the beauty niche. And the average monthly revenue for the business is $159,634 and makes an average of $58,174 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are a Shopify and Amazon Seller Central account, domain and all site content and files, including a blog with over 200 articles, an email list with over 48,000 subscribers, social media pages and accounts with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest. SOPs, which include a course, a branding guideline, among several others, intellectual property, employee contacts and relationships, supplier contacts and relationships, trademark, G Drive and Gmail enterprise account, training manuals, an iOS and Android app. And just as a disclaimer, inventory is not normally included in the list price, but further details can be provided to verified buyers. So for everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 56145 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing the asset. So that's a brief overview of the business for sale. Let's hear from the seller with me today. So welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. And I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your business. So starting with the first question, Paul, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Well, prior to my background in e-commerce was zilch. I've learned every bruise and nick and bruise that a person can take in the last 7 years trying to figuring it out. But I don't think I'm alone in that sense. In the explosion of online e-commerce businesses in the last 5 years, I actually think I was a little bit ahead of the curve. I came from a construction industry where I owned a business for 10 years, which I exited in 2012, which couldn't be the polar opposite of e-commerce. So I had quite the learning curve. I did have some great mentors that were in the e-commerce space before me. It's partly one of the reasons we moved the company to Arizona, is to be closer to them when we were starting the company. So I've had some really good teachers, some really good mentors in the space. And as we stand here today, I think of ourselves as experts in Shopify e-commerce space.
Wow, that's really cool. Usually when I speak to somebody, a seller, it's not completely evident that there's a group of mentors in the background. Could you tell me just a little bit more about that and just how, I guess, important that was in your transition from construction to e-commerce?
The value of that and cannot be understated. Whenever anybody asks me, friends, family, whatever, like, how did you learn this stuff? Like, how did you get going? I always come back to the same answer. So our friends were in the athletic women's apparel business. And at the time, they were the best experts that I could find in relation to Facebook advertising. And at the time, Facebook advertising was really loose. Those targeted ads that you could run in like 2015 were just incredible. And the reach was incredible. They built up like 1 million followers on Facebook. They would get like 16,000 views on their videos that they were targeting. And like their reach and their likes and their reposts were just incredible. I'm talking tens of thousands. And I was sitting with him one day and I was like, so tell me a little bit more about your business. And he started telling me all this stuff. And he's like, there's this Facebook and there's these targeting ads and they're just driving so much sales. And I was like, wow, I think that we need to move closer to these guys because they have it figured out. And that's how we actually built our user base from the very beginning. We built it in a combination of two ways. Janelle, the founder, and we can touch on Janelle's role in a second. She's the one that this business is all her idea, that this is something she started up on her own. And then I came on board about a year and a half later. But Janelle built this business by knocking on doors like one by one. And also she's done about 40 trade shows related to the beauty industry. So we built our loyal customer base that way. And then we built our base of the people we didn't know on those early days Facebook targeted ads. They were just absolutely genius. But we learned a lot from them. They were on, I think it was Magento. They were on Magento, which we quickly learned that was an absolute beast. I mean, that platform is so open, it's crazy. And it was just incredible. So we, not being coders or web developer type people, we went with an easier platform at the time, which is called ZenCart, which I look back at that now, it's kind of like using dial-up in relation to using the web today. You know, it's just so crazy. There was no dashboard. There was no reports. There was no, I mean, you were flying completely blind. It was really just a virtual cash register. So yeah, we started on ZenCart. We lost all of our information when we started on Shopify in April 2017. You know, besides our tax returns, we have no proof of sales or customer data beyond 2017, with the exception of our email list, which we started thankfully with MailChimp, and then we're on Klaviyo now. But thank God we retain our customer list. It was the one thing that we could export and then import into Shopify. So that was a very painful transition for us, because we're like, we've just spent 3 years building this like shopping cart experience and a website, and now everything has to be just torn down and done again for Shopify. But you know what? Thankfully, we did it, because there are people now that are just coming over to Shopify. Let's say, you know, I mean, Shopify has exploded within the last year, and people are just coming on board in the last year or so. And, you know, I'm thankful looking back at it now. So we have almost 5 years of historical data in Shopify now, which is, you know, more than sufficient, I think, for, you know, doing long-term trends and stuff like that. So we're finally there.
Nice. And yeah, good on you for the email list. Right now we're going through kind of an article just about writing an article about the importance of an email list. And kind of just reaffirmed that your entire business can disappear. But if you have your email list, you can pretty much pick up from where you're left off, maybe is a better way of saying that. So yeah, good to hear that.
I think it's a combination of that and customers who love your brand, right? And I think that a lot of companies nowadays, they miss the grassroots loyal customer thing by a mile. Everyone's going for fast revenue and how many users can we drive to the site. And if we convert a certain percentage of them, you know, maybe our ROI will work out. Maybe we'll get a 3-to-1. I don't know. We've never taken the easy road out that way with this company. And digging into the Shopify reports, there's a report in the back end for loyal customers. And you can run that report and it shows, you know, their number of orders, last time they ordered, you know, when was their first order, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know, Shopify defines that customer as a customer that has ordered more than 3 times and also orders more than other people. And it's a pretty broad definition, and they don't reveal their algorithm on how they compute it beyond that. But as of today, we have approximately 2,700 loyal customers. And Nick, as you're probably well aware, the golden number for an e-commerce store is 1,000. You know, when you get to 1,000 customers, you've like, you know, you're doing $1 million in revenue. I mean, that's like the benchmark. So we're pretty proud of that number. That number stayed pretty consistent as of today.
Yeah, and that's an important point you bring up, because sometimes I'll go through businesses and see that they do have maybe a large email list, but I will have to make a distinction as to if it's an email list that's actively being engaged or if it's just a list of names, because those are two very different things. An engaged email list versus one that was just maybe a lot of people landing on a squeeze page and just providing their information for a free ebook or something like that. So yeah, it definitely seemed like you had a far more engaged audience here and a returning audience. So that's great to see.
Once you get to and this takes a while to figure out the value of your email list. And As of today in Klaviyo, we have our email list segmented, I think maybe over 100 segments. As we stand here today, coincidentally, our email marketing, which also is infused by our SMS marketing, which Klaviyo also does for us, is the number one way that we market the company today. And it doesn't cost us barely anything to do that. Our emails get a pretty high engagement rate. I think our marketing person came in and 2 weeks ago and told me we got a 20% open rate the other day and on one email, and the office was over the moon. I mean, that's a hard rate to get nowadays. But going through and scrubbing that list, right? Even though, our list is 48K deep. I mean, how many of those people bought from us 5 years ago and, moved on to another industry? I think it's an important buyer. When a buyer's doing its due diligence, it needs to dig into that list, see what we're doing in there. And we'd welcome that because that's the number one way you're going to market the company going forward. And we have all of the branding templates already made. You really just change the content, change the imagery, and change the message, and you just press send. There's not a whole lot to do anymore. So we love email marketing. It's great.
Nice. Well, we'll get more into some growth opportunities in a little bit. So this has been a great conversation so far, but to backtrack, let's go to the reason for the sale. Why are you deciding to sell the business now? It seems like it's going great so far.
Yes. So this answer, I've been asked a whole bunch of times already, and it's multi-pronged, the answer. In its simplest form, I think the best analogy is when you buy a stock at $1 and it goes to $10. I mean, how much more can you expect to profit, right? And when you're ready to sell at $10, there needs to be somebody on the other end that buys it at 10 and sees the future benefit, the fundamentals or whatever in the company, to then see it to $50 or $100. And we're kind of at the $10 mark right now. So there's a time in business and investing where it's like, okay, I've done what I can do. I've got my return. Now we lock a return up and we move on. It's just smart business. The second part of that is a very real answer, which is our product line is directly used in salons on clients. And as you can imagine, in March of 2020, as everyone knows, and as many other businesses that were affected, it was a harrowing moment for us. And we're like, oh my God, we just spent 6 years of our lives building this thing up, and to watch it all go to zero. And, in April 2020, we're like, okay, this thing, it's a goose egg from now on. Is this ever coming back? So that was a tough moment. And for me, for my PTSD, I went through the housing crisis in 2018 and 2019, and I was in the construction industry, and I had a few buildings I was building at the time that I got goose egged on. So I've been working for myself now for 21 years. I've been through a few dips. And one thing I've learned is that when you build something up, that you eventually sell it and you move on, you do your next thing. So I think a question that I would want to know as a buyer, there'd be several things I want to know. What's the elasticity of this business? Can it bounce back? Can it sustain a black swan event like a pandemic? And looking at our revenue, you'll see that we bounced back. We fully bounced back in some regard. And this past summer, we had some of the best 3 months we've ever had. So regards to why you're selling, well, I just made it through a pandemic and our industry is fully back in motion. Me and Janelle, we honestly feel like this is great. We made it through this. Maybe it's time to look elsewhere to do something else for now. And the third part of that is, admittingly so, mine and Janelle's skill set. Janelle is an artist, a designer, sort of a visionary type person. I'm more of an operations. How do we build this thing? How do we build a plan to then build an organization? And then which silos do we divide the company up into so that we could possibly exit? Because you're always thinking about, when you're building something, you're always thinking about what's the best way to build this. And we built this company in 5 silos, in any 5, or really actually any 4 of the 5, because the 5th one is our corporate expense, which is one of our silos. But any 5 could exit. And the whole plan originally was to be fully vertically integrated. And we want to build a company that way. And this selling 2 portions of the business here, or 3 if you include our academy, which is optional. is a testament to that and the way that we built a company and we've run it separately like that. So there's really a extended answer for why we're selling. And like I said, it's what I just mentioned, 3 or 4 reasons. I think it's a combination of those 4. And when you just know when something's ready, it's ready.
Yeah, that sounds good. Those are all, I think, answers that I've heard other sellers mention, pandemic. And yeah, when you know you're ready, you're ready. Great. So going on, I know you mentioned before email marketing being really great, returning customers, awesome. Did you want to mention anything else that you learned from building this business that just seemed to work?
Yeah, our customer, whom we know very well today. So we did a complete rebranding about 2.5 years ago. And prior to that rebranding, we were, black and white colors, thin fonts, very similar branding to like a Sephora, for instance. Everything was black and white or a mixture of the two and never any color. And we hired a really important branding expert that came on board with us. He's actually an advisor of the company today. And he did a complete workout with us as far as our branding and created a branding development guide for us and how we could set ourselves apart from our competitors. The competitors in our space, which we're considered one of the top brands in our space today, are very much, pink, unicorns, butterflies, very girly. And we had to figure out a way to set ourselves apart from that. So we decided to do the polar opposite. And the reason why we did that was because our demographic has purple hair. They have, arm tattoos. They're cool with like smoking weed. It's that group. And our founder, Janelle, my wife, she resonates with that group. So one thing that really works for us is that our customer loves buying from us because we get them. I'd like to touch a little bit on our product names. And that's a clear example of that. When looking at our product list on our website, you're going to see that our brand names are a little risque. They're a little eye-popping. And where we got that from was I have the very fortunate pleasure of being introduced to a man who sort of revolutionized that idea. His name's Bruno Mascolo. He is one of the founders of Tony and Guy, who then created TG Brands, which is the founder and creator of Bedhead. And as many people know, Bedhead is very eye-catching. I mean, one of the shampoos is called Dumb Blonde, and their bottle shapes are, in some instances, phallical shaped. And all of their product names, I think their hair gel is called like the Orgasm, for instance. So I think that one of the biggest things that we learned was, resignation with a customer begins with them associating with you as a brand. And we do a really good job of that. And you can see by looking at our assets on our website and scrolling through our product names, you can see how we become an unforgettable brand once you bought from us.
That's awesome. And it sounds like as you're describing all of these, I guess, different parts of the business. So one takeaway is this all sounds like an extremely legitimate and just, I guess, well polished or just highly professional operation with a lot of big names involved. So that's pretty unique with this business. How would you describe the amount of work for a buyer who's looking to come on and acquire this business? Can you describe the amount and the type of work that you do on this business for maintenance and what kind of skills a new owner would need in order to be successful with this business?
Yeah. So speaking about me specifically, I'm more of a macro strategy, almost like a comptroller nowadays, where I'm almost exclusively now on the financial side, that the operational part of the business kind of like runs on its own. It's, we're on our 7th iteration of our website right now since we've been on Shopify. And finally, I was talking to Janelle about this last week. Finally, our website coding and all of our stuff is like, I don't even hear about it anymore, right? And before that, it was such a pain point to get your website right and making sure everything works and it's optimized and it has a good flow and interlinks. I mean, there's so much to it, but our website is actually, I wouldn't want to say unbreakable, but it's in a really good spot right now, which is a huge plus for a buyer. So if you're not an expert at that sort of stuff, website development. The heavy lifting there has been done. So there's one pain point that's huge for people. I'd say that understanding of supply chain and vendor relations is really important. We have about a dozen vendors in 6 or 7 countries that we buy from, and how to create POs and interact with those people. Sometimes we just talk to them via WeChat and things like that. So just having somebody on your staff that has the ability to do that is really important. Also, the person understands warehousing and packaging and shipping is also real important. It's a huge part of the business. Customer care. We've built this company. Another way we've set ourselves apart is we employed a really aggressive customer care strategy that at one time had us, prior to COVID, had us answering the phones, over 100 hours a week live. So if you called our number, we answered the phone live 100 hours a week. It was a lot and it required a lot of effort. But you know what? Our customer base, they do need support. So customer care team, whom we have one person today, 9 to 5. The rest we've figured out how to automate through Shopify and Shopify apps. We have all of our customer communications aggregated to one app now, which is incredible and easy to use. And we have a 40-page customer care operational manual as well, describing on how to manage our customer care. So that's a big part of the business. And then I would say third piece is supply chain, customer care. And the third piece is marketing. Somebody who can read our brand manual, which we have a very clearly defined branding guideline that we already have created. Somebody that can interpret our brand manual, learn from Janelle for however much time it takes to learn how our voice and messaging comes across. But we have a huge Google Drive full of assets, photos, videos that can all be reused and recycled. There's thousands of things in there. We have email templates already set up, so it's plug and play. But somebody who understands, okay, if I send this email on Monday morning through Klaviyo, then follow it up with an SMS at 2:00 as a reminder. So someone understands the flow of marketing dynamics in that way. Also someone who's very proficient in social media, of course, like almost every company nowadays. There's 4 people, and social media is kind of its own person. They need to be on there commenting, liking, resharing the user-generated content nonstop. We just get a ton of interest when we engage with our customers on social media. So we have somebody just sitting there on their phone all day. It's kind of funny. I always walk by and I laugh and I'm like, oh, there's another employee on her phone. But wait, she's supposed to be on the phone.
That's funny.
Yeah. So those are the 4 key components to running this company today.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that the number of team members it was very clear what each person was doing. So yeah, so it seems like for this business acquisition, I guess working with the team is going to be very important, and having a business owner taking over everything is just not going to work. It's good to see that the pieces are already set and they're very clear.
Exactly. Yeah, they're clearly defined. We have a few auxiliary roles, like we have a warehouse specialist who fields packages from our vendors, gets tests, runs our R&D shipping and stuff like that, just processes our shipping returns, which are pretty low. But I think the absolute minimum team size is 4, could be 5 or 6, but this definitely is not a business for a single person.
Got it. So it sounds like you have a lot of these pieces set in place. The business is moving along. If you were to keep the business, what are some ways you would try to grow it?
In February of this year, we launched our Amazon seller account. Admittingly, not Amazon experts. I would say we're like grade school level Amazon people. I managed that account myself with a third party. We actually hired like an Amazon management specialist company to do it for us because the learning curve on there now is so huge, and the Amazon seller backend is just massive. And there's so many nuances with working with Amazon, from product pages to product compliance to reviews and PPC. I mean, it's massive. So I see a huge growth opportunity there. We have the storefront already created. We have our account. I think all of the hard part, all the nuanced hard work is complete. It's now time to build it, grow it, get more reviews, and expand the product line on there. We have 405 SKUs as of today. Only 12 of them are on Amazon currently, roughly 12. So there's an opportunity to add our product line on Amazon, which is huge. So if the buyer is an expert in that area, I think they will flourish. Another point for expansion would be in paid advertising. Prior to when we launched back in 2015, there was a period like in 2017 where the Facebook targeting ads kind of dried up and everyone moved to Instagram and YouTube and, TikTok and et cetera, et cetera. And we stopped pretty much all paid advertising at that point, and we just did like email marketing, and we messed around with SMS quite a bit, as that seemed to be getting a ton of engagement. But we haven't really tapped into that, and we did for a brief period. So just after COVID began, we hired a PPC specialist within the company that we got from an agency. She was laid off from a PPC agency. We hired her, and I committed to her for a year, committed a budget to that of approximately whatever we had. It's all in our seller account. I committed a budget to it, and we gave that a shot. It wasn't very successful for us, I think. And I don't know if it was, users or our strategy or, the ads we were running or the ability of the person that we hired. It could be a combination of things. I think it's a little bit closer to the person that we hired to do a job's ability to really drive an ROI with that. But if the buyer is skilled in Google Analytics and paid advertising, I think of that today as something that's never really been tapped. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we've grown this company from sort of the ground up, sort of one by one, sort of, old school style. And the mass market of paid advertising has never really been leveraged completely. And you can see that, by looking at our revenue and when we had paid advertising and when we didn't.
Sounds great. And sounds like there's a ton of opportunity with this business. And with every business that has opportunities, there's also risks. So what do you think is the biggest risk associated with this business that buyers should be aware of?
Just coming out of this Black Swan pandemic event, I would say that would be the number one risk. So future Black Swan events, but I don't think there's an industry that's going to go untouched if that happens again. Biggest risk beyond that, I would say, as we just mentioned, not having the appropriate staffing in place to be able to take the tasks from us properly. That worries me a little bit. And that's one of the things that I've been focusing in on my buyer calls. What does your team look like? What does your team makeup consist of? What's their experience? As I'm trying to evaluate their rate of success, right? Because the brand's success means a lot to us. This is Janelle's baby. This is her first business. And I was joking with her the other day. I was like, wow, what it must feel like to go 1 for 1,
Yeah, seriously.
Like on your first attempt, like you should be so proud of yourself. Like that's huge. Like that rarely happens. It's such a unicorn. And yeah, so not having the proper team in place would be a problem. I would say like in one of the other pain points, like someone else asked me this, like, what are some of the pain points in running this business? I think that if you're not experienced with dealing with shipping and United States Postal Service and customers who expect packages to be same day shipped and to have them on their doorstep in 2 or 3 days, like Amazon has all trained us, that you're going to have a tough time. And it takes a very calm and patient person to be able to deal with each individual customers, especially at the rate that we have sales. It's pretty easy to control when you do 10 sales a day, but when you're doing, and by grand comparison, our company is even really tiny, whatever, when you're doing 100 something orders a day, which still is not a ton, it can be overwhelming if you don't have your ducks in a row with customer care and managing customer expectations.
Got it. Great answers. All right, Paul. So I have a few housekeeping questions here for you. First question is, how much support are you willing to offer buyers?
So the success of the brand is really important to us. Like I previously mentioned, this is Janelle's first successful go. She's 1 for 1, and she cares a ton about the brand and our customers and the success of the company. So in our discussions about selling the company, that's a major pain point for her. So if that could be reduced in a way that we can help, that would be meaningful for us. So, speaking for myself personally, I'm willing to help on an operational, organizational level as much as needed, as much as required to be. And I think that would depend on the skill set of the new team. If they're accustomed to e-commerce and shipping and ordering and supply chain, I think my role will be lesser. As far as Janelle, she's stressed to me that, if she had to be involved with the new company on a branding level, that she would be. She said that she's available. We don't have plans to sell the company and, sit in the lounge chair in the backyard. That's not our nature. So we're builders, entrepreneurs, what's next batter up kind of thing. So we will be working on a new project, although that's not been identified yet. So there's a period here, probably, I would say all of 2020, where we're going to be testing new ideas and what to do next. So I think we're going to be pretty free next year, which bodes well for the buyer. And whatever's required of her from the branding and education standpoint, she's willing to do.
Nice. So it sounds like it's partially going to depend on how much experience the buyer has. So I guess safe to say that this question on support or the details of that can be discussed with a specific buyer.
That's correct.
Okay. Sounds good. And just want to make sure, would you commit to a non-compete?
Yes, of course.
Okay. And are you open to something like an earnout?
Yeah. So us evaluating our buyers, again, one of the most important things for us, just like the buyers evaluating us in our business, is it's kind of a two-way street. So the more confidence we have in the buyer and the buyer's ability to grow the company and to make it successful will loosen up our terms, right? But we are actually very interested in possibly retaining a portion of the equity in the company, if that's possible. We don't think this industry is going anywhere. If anything, it's going to get bigger. And we're excited about the future of the industry. And if we could still have some skin in the game, that would be kind of cool for us.
Nice. Okay. Well, last few questions here then. So putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, I know you've answered a lot of these opportunities and benefits of the business, but why do you think this is a business worth buying?
I think that when you're looking at businesses and you're like, okay, here's our checklist, and the checklist for some people may be 10 items, some other people it might be 50. But as you go down the list, right, and you're like, okay, they got that. Okay, they're online and remote. They can work from anywhere. Okay, they're no brick and mortar. Okay, there's no invoicing. All of their transactions on a cash basis in a shopping cart. They get paid, the next day. We don't have to worry about invoicing. They have social media already created and followers. Like, that's a huge task for a new brand. They have an email list of 48K. They're generating interest in a podcast. Wow, that's kind of neat and cutting edge. Like, every brand should be doing that. They have a team in place. They're not just working from their house, or this isn't a loosely run company. They have elasticity from COVID. Great. So this industry isn't going anywhere. Their product quality is incredible. And, a quick touch on that. Like, we have over 700 Google reviews written by customers attesting to our product and our training that we have. I believe I've supplied the links to those. Quick explanation on that. When we moved to Arizona, we had a downtown Phoenix address, and then we now are in Scottsdale. So we've had 2 locations, and Google doesn't let you transfer your reviews. It's a really quirky thing they have. So we've kept both locations alive on Google Maps so that we wouldn't lose our first location's reviews. But if you add them together, they're 700 plus. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I think there's less than 20 4-star, right? So there's 685 star. And people write dissertations in there. So if you want to understand, or you want a deeper understanding of our product quality, so that box is checked. Do they have a loyal returning customer base? Yes, they got that. Do they have a subscription model? Yes. Oh my God, X% of their revenue comes every day from subscriptions. It's in the shopping cart when you wake up. So yeah, wow, there's a subscription component. You just go down the list, right? Are their revenues good? Are they selling a product with a high margin? Well, it's a known that beauty and cosmetics have the highest margins in almost all industries. So, yep, they got that high margin product. Do they have branding and support from people that really know what they're doing and have made it already? Yes, they got that too. And they learned all their branding from there. Do they have a website that's not like broken and clunky? Yep, got that too. I think the list is pretty big. Of course, I'm biased. But the best that I can do is to share the information about this company in the best way that I can and let everyone else make their own decisions.
Yes, that was a huge list of reasons. And I think for that reason, it sounds like probably best for a phone call with buyers just to talk through any specific points that might specifically intrigue a buyer of all of the ones that you just listed. So it sounds like we just went through a ton about this business. Is there anything that you'd like to add that you think I might have missed during this interview?
Yeah, so we're not just sitting over here running the business status quo. So there are other opportunities that we're working on with the product line that I can get into more detail with potential buyers that are really exciting, and stuff that, we have in the cooker that may come to fruition at any moment. And this isn't something we're like, okay, we set it and forget it. We're going to create this company, create a loyal following, and then that's it. I mean, I don't want to detail them in a public-facing podcast, but there are tremendous opportunities that we're working on, and we see tremendous opportunities in expanding the product line, especially into the client-facing side, using the brand value that we've already created with our user.
Nice. That's super exciting. Well, I think that's the perfect place to wrap this up. So I'm going to leave that here. But Paul, thank you very much for sharing your story and joining us on today's episode. And I really hope your business is purchased in the near future and by the perfect buyer.
Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 56145. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.